Decorating Center in their expanded showroom. And a good morning. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Art Lewis Show here on WSGW. Coming up on the 26th of April, the Saginaw Choral Society is presenting Titans of Music, Mozart's Requiem and Beethoven's Choral Fantasy. A couple of folks involved with it are with us this morning. First of all, someone who is not only the pianist for the Choral Society, but quite a composer in her own right. And we are pleased to say good morning to Catherine McMichael.
Morning.
She drug along screaming her husband, and this is paybacks for him dragging me screaming into his studio at Delta College's public radio. Former concertmaster of the Saginaw Symphony, conducted the youth orchestra, and still plays violin for the orchestra. He is Rod Bieber.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning. Ha, 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 you're here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me out.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure.
Catherine, I want to start with you. How long have you been associated with the Choral Society?
Since 1981.
81?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, really. And it's a funny story because Jack Yonker, who was the director at that time.
I do remember him well.
He also had a position at Delta College, and
Yep.
Rod and I did some teaching out there. So we were acquainted with Jack, and he kept saying, "Oh, when you move up to Saginaw, you've got to join Choral Society." So we decided to move up to Saginaw, and it was August 31st, 1981. And I called Jack, and I said, from Ann Arbor, I said, "Jack, I'm coming up. We're moving up to Saginaw. I'm going to join Choral Society." He says, "My son was born today." And so, that's where it put me in the hierarchy, of course, So, but I remember that so well. So I started out in the alto section leader for a while, and then just singer, and then took a little hiatus when we had our little kids that were little, and then I came back with Glenn Thomas as accompanist, and I think I don't know how long I've been with him as accompanist, maybe 10 years? I'm not sure.
And you also play with the symphony.
And the symphony and the Flint Symphony as well.
And then you write.
I do.
You compose.
I do.
That's your husband who just fiddles around.
Yeah. Yeah.
My great claim to fame is I married above my station in life.
Yeah, well, you weren't the only one. I did that too. It's the only way to go.
That's right.
And Rod, you've been with the symphony. I mean, you go back to Leo Najjar days.
Well, actually, before Leo.
Before Leo, were you here when...
Gideon Grau.
Yeah.
I came up. I had a good friend who is since passed away, but he was in graduate school with me at the University of Michigan. He ended up playing with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, but he told me, before I came to Michigan as a grad student, he said, "You should play in Saginaw. I've been concertmaster in Saginaw. Gideon Grau likes to hire people from Michigan to be concertmaster of the orchestra." And so I said, "Okay, that's good." And then we were talking about playing in chamber ensembles in school. And I said, "Yeah, and I was assigned to this chamber group with a pianist, Catherine McMurray or McMichael or something." He's all, "Catherine McMichael." He says, "She's cute. You should marry her." So I took him up on his suggestion.
All the way around.
Yeah.
All the way around. I have to ask you, though, Rod. I mean, when I grew up in New York City, we had to take music as a regular course when we were in elementary school, 5th grade. And they came in and they laid out all these instruments and they gave you your choice of what do you want to play. Well, I wanted to play the drums. Understand, I lived in a New York apartment complex. That wasn't happening. Then I wanted to play the trumpet. I lived in an apartment complex. That wasn't happening. Somebody suggested the clarinet, and that's what I ended up with.
Yeah.
What led you to the violin?
This is. Did somebody set you up for this story?
No. No.
When I was in 4th grade, the music teacher came to school and said they sent a note home to the parents. We're going to offer music instruction in the schools. Blah 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 blah. What do you want to do? So I talked about it, and they said, yeah, you can do an instrument. So I went to the program, watched the orchestra play, and these were 7th and 8th graders. Well, I mean, they may as well have been the New York Philharmonic to us. I mean, we thought they were fabulous. So we come back the next day, they do a music test, and they ask us what we wanted to play. So the teacher goes down the line. We're sitting in the auditorium. She points to a kid, trumpet. another kid, trombone, clarinet, flute. Then the three people before me, violin, violin, violin. She looked at me. I said violin because the people before me said violin. I don't think I even knew what a violin was, but I figured if it was good enough for them, it sounded interesting to me. I'll do it, and never put it down since.
And did you take music performance at U of M?
Yes, I did my undergrad at University of Cincinnati, College Conservatory of Music, and then went to Michigan for my graduate work, where I met Catherine, and things snowballed, and here we are.
So you got a violin and Catherine out of this whole story.
I did, yeah.
Well, that worked out pretty well for you.
Well, it did so far, yeah.
Yeah. And then you became concertmaster.
I came up here to be concertmaster, yes, in 75.
How does this relate to New York life?
Not at all.
Insurance business.
No, it does.
Just a way to make-
Well, actually, it does because when I was doing music full time. I was teaching privately, playing in the symphony, conducting the youth orchestra.
Because your son, if I remember right, your son was an accomplished violinist.
He still is. He's a lot better than his old man.
And he's in Nashville?
He's in Nashville, doing conducting and playing in the studios. But what was the question again?
I don't remember. New York life.
New York life. So I was doing music full time, and something happened. I was doing something around the house, and a piece of glass slipped and cut my hand.
Oops.
Yeah, and so I missed a rehearsal because I really could not play for a couple days. And it's so strange. I at the end after the cycle, I got paid, and they didn't pay me for the rehearsal I missed. And something about that triggered a thought in my life that, if I can't play, I can't earn a living. And at that point, I decided I needed to branch out and look at some other things. I investigated real estate for a little bit, and then eventually I always had a liking to finance and insurance and things of that nature, and joined another company for a couple of years, and then went to New York Life in 1989.
So I say you've been New York life for
36 years, and
now
I
you
love it.
solo practice?
Yeah, my own business with my assistant D, and but I'm a private.
You still do it?
Still do it, and people ask me, why don't you retire? And I think, well,
I get asked that.
yeah. I said Art Lewis isn't retiring, so why should I retire?
I knew that was coming.
But I'm not
I've known you a long
I'm not lifting heavy machinery or anything like that. Not climbing under the as long as you got some of your marbles. I don't even need all of them, but at least you got a few of them.
So I tell folks, if my brain and mouth work, I can sit here.
That's right.
I'll tell you, the guy that taught me more about persevering later in life. I once had a conversation with Malcolm Field, the great neurosurgeon, and I said, Malcolm, this was when he was in his 80s, probably young 80s. How long are you going to keep doing this? He said, well, as long as I have my mind, eyes, and hands, somebody holds me up, I can do the surgery. I said, oh, okay. All right. And I've taken that philosophy. I mean, I just love to work.
Yeah.
I'd be bored otherwise.
Well, and it's the people too, isn't it?
It is. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, more than anything. It's the interaction.
It's funny with with New York Life, I'm able to really call my own hours and my own shots, and the company really likes that you're involved in the community.
Yeah.
And it's not a win-win. I mean, it's not a adversarial thing. It's a win-win. You're involved in the community. You're helping people, and
this company, Alpha Media, is the same way. They even offer us paid time off to volunteer.
That's great.
So
I got some leaves at my yard need to be raked. You think you could get credit for that?
I'll have to check your finances to see if you qualify. We'll take a break. Come back. We will be talking more, though, about the Titans of Music from the Choral Society on the 26th of April that they both will be performing in. And we'll tell you more about that after all this.
Join us for our
right, we're back with you in studio.
The WSGW Morning Team Show. Weekdays 5:30 to 9 on WSGW.
Can't control my own fingers. Oh, well. Welcome back in studio with me, Catherine McMichael and Rod Bieber, husband and wife, and both accomplished, to say the least, musicians. Catherine, let's talk about this concert coming up on the 26th, the Titans of Music for the Choral Society. These pieces, Mozart's Requiem, there's a story behind that. Beethoven's Choral Fantasy, there's drama behind that. So tell us a little bit about these things.
The Mozart Requiem was written on Mozart's deathbed.
Literally, he was still writing, even though he was literally on his deathbed, he was still writing music.
He was, and he didn't finish the Requiem. In fact, he only got the Requiem part of the Requiem, and there's about, 7 or 8 additional movements, which he had some sketches for, sometimes as small as just a phrase or two, which his protege, Süssmayr, finished. There's been a lot of dispute about who actually finished them. There's also been a lot of other people finishing the Requiem also.
What's interesting about that, to me anyway, Mozart really only completed, for the most part, the Requiem passage.
Right. The opening part.
The overwhelming majority of it was written by somebody else.
Right.
Yet
And
they still call it Mozart's Requiem.
They do, because he laid the groundwork. And in fact, there's an interesting quote by Beethoven about the Requiem, and Beethoven said, if it wasn't Mozart that wrote it, then whoever wrote it was a Mozart.
Yeah, because it was in the style.
It is a beautiful, beautiful piece of music, and every movement is full of passion and emotion and gorgeous lines, beautiful melodies, very difficult choral work. If you are familiar with the Messiah, there's a lot of fancy vocal footwork there. There's a lot in the Requiem also. I mean, it's technically difficult to sing. We've got some wonderful soloists that will be in not only on the Mozart but also on the Beethoven. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. And it's interesting, during rehearsals, I can't get Amadeus out of my head, the movie from whatever, that was maybe in the 80s, because the movie used a lot of music from Mozart's works, but principally the Requiem toward the end as he's on his deathbed and when he dies. And they play the Lacrimosa, which is probably the best known. It's such a hauntingly beautiful movement. And there's this scene in Amadeus when it's drizzling and it's cold, and they're taking Mozart's body out to this pauper's grave because he couldn't even afford hardly a coffin, and they just shove him into the ground, and that's it. I mean, no one really knows where Mozart's buried. And the Lacrimosa is playing in the background, and every time we rehearse it, that scene is in my mind. It's so unbelievably perfect for the grief and anguish of that movement.
It's interesting. You put these two guys together, Mozart and Beethoven. Mozart on his deathbed writes this. Beethoven, for the most part, later in life, deaf.
Yes.
And then writes the Ninth. And he wrote it in such a way he couldn't hear it. Consequently,
yes,
if you're in a choral society trying to sing it, you better have the range, because he was all over the place with it.
It's so interesting. If I could pick a night in history to go back to, it would either be the night of the performance premiere of the Choral Fantasy, which we'll be doing, which was a complete and utter failure, or the premiere of Beethoven's Ninth, both of which there are incredible stories about those premieres. The Ninth because he could not hear at all, and the Choral Fantasy because you talk about Leo and the stories that accrue to the premiere of the Choral Fantasy sound like a real Leo kind of thing, you know. I mean, I worked with Leo in the Bijou Orchestra. We would be getting parts as he's racing in. I mean, he's just cursing because the copy machine didn't work, because he just finished the parts. And for the Choral Fantasy, one of the critics said, you know, he was distributing still wet parts to the choir the day of the performance.
Because they were all penned. I mean,
yes. So the
pen
ink was still wet when he was handing it out for the dress rehearsal. And the orchestra that played for that concert, which, by the way, okay, December 22nd, 1808 in Vienna. Okay, it's cold. It's a cold December day. The concert started at 6:30 and went till 10:30 at night in the theater. And the works that were premiered were his Pastoral Symphony, the Sixth Symphony, and the Fifth Symphony. You know, da 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 da. That was
All of that?
premiered that night, plus the Fourth Piano Concerto in G, which is sublime, and the Choral Fantasy. Plus, there were movements of his Mass in C, and Beethoven wrote the Choral Fantasy.
One concert?
Yes, yeah, it was a 4-hour concert. Apparently, not so unusual for the time to have these mega concerts, marathon concerts.
Yeah, well, there wasn't anything else to do.
Well,
Was.
no, there was. You could have gone to the benefit concert for widows and orphans put on by Salieri the very same night.
Okay.
Which is why there were a lot of amateurs playing Beethoven's concert, because they would be fined if they didn't play the benefit concert for the widows and orphans for Salieri. So, I mean, all this drama going on, and the soprano soloist got in a fight with Beethoven, so she bailed, and then he had like a 16-year-old singer singing who was so stage frightened she kind of blew all the solos. And I mean, it was, we can relate, it's real life. You think that it's sublime and it's Beethoven and it's perfect and it's wonderful. Well, the Choral Fantasy, which we will be performing and I will be performing, opens with about a 5-minute piano solo. It's like a cadenza at the beginning. And I've approached it, interpretively as if I were making it up, because I thought, I wonder if Beethoven just made this up. And actually he did. He improvised the opening of the Choral Fantasy. In fact, he improvised the Fourth Piano Concerto, too, which is another, thing to contemplate that. But my whole approach to the Choral Fantasy as I prepare it as a performer is to try and walk with Beethoven as he's, what'll I do next? What should I do next? What should come next? And it's really interesting to do it that way. And of course, he'd written the orchestra parts, so he knew what the orchestra was going to be doing. And what was left to him was, and he performed it. He performed the premiere. Was, well, what'll I do? And in true, genius fashion, he said, well, I'll just figure something out and do it. And that's kind of what he did for that.
How did it
concert.
get transcribed into paper then?
Well, he was a very good composer. And he had I'm sure, even the best improvisers, Keith Jarrett, all these fabulous improvisers, Dave Brubeck, they work out their licks. They know what they're going to do. They just haven't maybe, set it in stone, and then they sit down and write it out, and they do it.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked Rob. What drew to your instrument? What drew you to piano?
I was very little. I was a little kid, like 3 or 4. And I asked my mom if I could play the piano, and we didn't even have a piano, and none of my friends did. She said, I don't even know how you wanted to play the piano. There's a picture of me, I think I may be 2, sitting in front of one of those little toy pianos. Mm-hmm. We ended up in Schenectady, New York. My dad was with GE, so we're there. And nobody would take any students until they could read words, so I started finally when I was 7, and I just kind of took to it. I've always loved playing the piano. I've played other instruments. I've dabbled, I have never really spent a lot of time studying other instruments, but there's something really physically satisfying about playing the piano.
You ever play with Kevin Cole?
Oh yeah. We've had a blast. We did My Fair Lady.
Genius.
Yes, he is. He is a genius, and he's a gentleman, and he is a kind and generous person.
Yep.
He was music director for My Fair Lady for Bay City Players.
Yep.
And instead of doing an orchestra version, we did 2 piano version with 2 Steinways on the stage. So we were kind of part of the show. That was a blast.
He's half Beethoven,
He's half Beethoven.
Yeah, he's half deaf.
Well,
one ear.
Well, he would call it half Gershwin.
Yeah, well, that's true.
He's half
he
Beethoven
would,
or full Gershwin.
Yeah,
because,
that's true.
Gershwin also had a tumor in the same place.
I've dubbed him a Gershwinologist.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
We'll take a break, come back, talk more with our guests. But the concert from the Choral Society, Titans of Music, Mozart's Requiem, Beethoven's Choral Fantasy, Saturday, April 26th, 3 o'clock at the Temple Theater. More ahead.
We're proud to make
And we are back with you. In studio with me, Rod Bieber from the Saginaw Bay Symphony Orchestra, where he plays violin, was concertmaster for many, many years, conducted the youth orchestra. I want to talk about that, too. And his lovely bride, Catherine McMichael, an accomplished pianist and a wonderful composer. And do you two ever debate music? Have you ever had her on your show? Let me ask you that.
I actually have, yeah. We don't debate it. I just say yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're a very smart man, Rod.
By the way, you used the word in the past tense, conducted the Saginaw Youth Orchestra.
You still do.
Well, is there something you know that I don't know?
No. I
Yeah,
didn't
still
realize
do. Yeah.
I'm very proud of that. That there is an orchestra today because
You had a big part in its early development.
my son Scott was in a band around here called Classic Graffiti
Yep.
for a couple of years. And they were phenomenal. They were fusion jazz. And we were sitting around one day, and they were looking for gigs. And I knew the orchestra had not funded youth activities for quite some time because of financial stress. And I said, gee, what if I could put together a concert with 3 progressive jazz styles, starting with Dixieland, moving through club jazz into modern. And I thought of
New Reformation Band,
Dave Opperman and the New Ref,
Mike Brush.
Mike Brush and Julie Mulady, and my son's band.
Yeah.
And I got together with some folks, and next thing I know, we were putting on a concert. And it was going to be at the Temple Theater. And I decided all the proceeds would go to fund or seed the youth development program with the symphony again.
Yeah.
So the first thing I had to do was go to the symphony and see if they were interested because they'd be committed, And fortunately, they said, yeah, go ahead. We can't afford to do anything. Just understand, there's no backing from us financially. I said, no, I understand that. So we did it at the Temple, and then we did it at the State Theater. And I think if I remember right, it was something like $15,000 to $18,000, somewhere in there is what we raised for it. And there it was.
I'm
Look
going
at it today.
I'm going to tie in something you were talking about in the first hour with Jeannie and Linda about their saying when things need to be done in Saginaw, people come together and get them done. And that's exactly what the music community did with the youth orchestra. It's same thing. People are willing and help and overly enthusiastic about helping each other. It's not a zero sum. Everybody wins.
And the youth orchestra today is pretty healthy.
Yeah, we're still recovering from COVID, but
COVID was outside the
yeah. And I tell the young people in the orchestra, I tell everybody I can, it's my favorite 3 hours of the week. Sunday afternoon we rehearse on the campus of Saginaw Valley from 2 to 5, and I love it. I just love giving back and having the opportunity to.
And this isn't your first go-round with them either, right?
Well,
in the old days, didn't you?
I started in '77 with the youth orchestra. Yeah. And it's funny. I was in 20s or whatever the heck I was, and here I am in my 70s, and I'm still doing it, and I feel like I'm just getting started.
Welcome to my world.
Well, I'm not in my 80s yet, but I hope to be doing it when I am.
But how often in life do you find something to make a career out of that you love?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's the way.
And that's the way, Catherine, you are.
Exactly.
You love it.
She has the perfect situation. She writes, she teaches, she plays in the Flint.
And she has a husband that says, yes, dear.
That's right. Well, the funny thing is, she's playing the Choral Society, the Choral Fantasy, which is a tremendous piano piece. 3 hours after that is over, she's doing the pre-concert talk in Flint with the Flint Symphony that same day. It's just the way the things aligned. And it's like leave the stage at the temple and go to Flint, Whiting Auditorium and pre-concert lecture.
And what are you doing during this Choral Society event?
I'm actually playing the violin.
How big a group do they have?
I'm not sure. I think it's three firsts. It's I think it's a small group.
More like an ensemble.
Yeah. Three firsts, 3 seconds, couple violas, cello, bass.
Just strings.
I think there are winds in it too.
Are there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there are winds in both Requiem and the Choral Fantasy.
Right. But it's a small ensemble.
It would be considered a chamber orchestra.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have to ask you, Catherine, have you ever wanted to conduct?
I conduct my bell choir, and I love my bell choir and I like leading them through, but I don't have a burning desire to conduct. That's our son. He's the conductor. And Rod's taken lessons from him, and Nathan's
true
learned.
Story.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And Nathan's learned from the best. He has a master's degree in orchestral conducting from University of Michigan with Ken Kiesler, who is the best mentor for young conductors. And when Rod's got an issue with how do I bring them in after this fermata, he calls Nathan, and Nathan tells him what to do, and it works. Conducting is a very interesting art. It's all body language. A good conductor shouldn't have to say much of anything. It should be all in the gestures. But many people, they wonder, what in the world does a conductor do? Until you see an orchestra conducted by a bad conductor, then you kind of know what it's kind of like having a clean house. Mm-hmm. You don't notice it. Unless it's dirty. And there's a real, the word I want to find, that's this, connection between a conductor and an orchestra.
Symbiotic,
chemistry.
kind of a symbiotic relationship.
Exactly. When the conductor is all about the music, the orchestra figures that out. And when it's not about the person, it's about the music, great things happen.
But you look at the Saginaw Symphony, and there's so many talented musicians came out of the University of Michigan and other orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
Fuad doesn't have to do that much. They come in, they sit down, they see the music, they play it. He makes the adjustments. But he really doesn't have to do a lot, does he?
Well, it's in a professional orchestra. Most people don't have the experience of playing in a professional orchestra.
Yeah.
So you play in a youth orchestra. We spend 8 weeks rehearsing the music. One of my students, Taylor Clark, plays with the symphony now occasionally, actually pretty regularly. But the first gig she had was of one rehearsal, one concert. You're playing pieces with one rehearsal that you would have in an amateur life you'd take 6 weeks to learn. Yeah. And everybody comes to that first rehearsal with the music pretty much learned.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've played it before usually.
Yes. Yes.
Often.
Many times.
Which is good news, bad news for a conductor.
Right, because this is the way we've done it. No, what we do.
Well, and if you take the job of a conductor, what his job really is to...
His or her job.
His or her job is to find the vision. How are we, we've all played this. Now we're going to do it this way.
What did the composer mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What was he saying?
Exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back, and finish up with our guests.
Protect your home and auto with a bundle from Ben Robbins, weekdays at noon on 100.5 and 790. News Radio WSGW.
Back with you in studio with me, Catherine McMichael.